all of us, with the exception of Jesse, because this kid, this guy was
he's nuts.
Selling crack in Hollywood, and all of a sudden, I'm sorry, was that you?
Yeah.
But the rest of us had had the good fortune of working with Mr. Spielberg and Andrea Romano and Tom Ruger on Tiny Toons and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So we already knew each other, but like Tress said, if you find, the older I get, I find out that the genius of a lot of people is knowing who to hire and then letting them do their thing. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
we all knew each other too, which was cool.
Yeah, we'd all worked on Tiny Toons, and so we kind of got first crack at the characters. And for me, I actually had the first appointment on the first day of auditions. Wow, is that right? They gave the 9 a.m. slot. They gave the 9 a.m. slot to the guy who was always late.
You're just getting in.
So I was the first person to read for the Brain, and the last person to read for the Brain.
Wow. Over and done. Boom.
Andrea Romano told me they cast me on the spot. But what happened with me, I looked at the Brain and saw Orson Welles. I didn't know they were basing him on a writer named Tom Minton that was working in the building. So I just looked at that and went, oh, how nice, they've drawn me a little Orson Welles mouse. Because they know I do that from Orson Welles back on Tiny Toons. So I read it, they cast me, I read for everything else, and didn't get it. Because the right people got it. And that's my
That is called serendipity, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
And it took them, by the end of the day, they had thought they'd found their Pinky. The Pinky was going to be John Aston.
How about that?
From
Gomez Addams.
From the Addams Family TV show, and from Tasmania, where he played a very cheerful villain named Bull Gator, which I thought the idea of just a cheerful villain was hysterical. And at that point, it was going to be Aston, and the next day, this guy reads, and they went, nope, that's Pinky. This guy.
And the rest is Narvstory.
But they made us wait quite a while before they made their casting decisions, and we were worried there.
Yeah, and Andrea, our lovely esteemed director and dear friend of ours, tells a story that, and it's I know it's true because it's experienced. I've actually experienced on more than one occasion. Is that sometimes when you're lucky enough to work a lot, producers start to say, oh, Tress MacNeille, yeah, okay, she's great, we've heard. So you sometimes want to change your name or do something.
Sure.
Because
I've done that before.
The whole idea about this is to be chameleon-like, to not have people pigeonhole you, and to not be worried about the way you look or the way whether you fit the suit. And Andrea tells a story of we purposely numbered the final
I like that.
callbacks for Mr. Spielberg. They said, okay, 1 through 10 for Dot, 1 through 10 for Yakko, 1 through 10 for Pinky, etc. And so the producers say, okay, great, I'm going to pick I'm happy with either 3, 5, or 8. Any one of those actresses would be great. Well, they all were Tress.
Gotcha.
But I understand the logic because people go, we've heard Tress now. This is the 5th or 6th callback, and Tress is it's the name. So instead of that, they just say, frankly, it's a toss-up. 8, 5, and 9 are all great. All right, great, they're all Tress. So people, as Tress said in Maurice, we were fortunate to be, as they say, luck is, and this is a great example of that, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. And that is absolutely true, you guys. Irrespective of what you do for a living, when you've done your almost 10,000 hours and you get the opportunity and you don't blow it, that's the difference, is that sooner or later you get a shot. Whether or not you capitalize is really, up to you. Now, the upshot of the whole thing, and here we are 20 years later talking about it, is just a huge gift. That you never know. So we are incredibly fortunate, for sure.
My thing was that, isn't he good? He should run for something.
He's shy.
The Hills.
He's very good. He's very good. No, my whole thing was that I was a jingle singer. I was singing in jingles and I was singing in bands, and one thing led to another, and a guy I had sang for said, hey, they're casting voices for this Splash Mountain ride at Disneyland. Have you guys been on that ride? Okay, that's my voice all over that ride. I'm Brer Rabbit, I'm Brer Accountant, I'm Brer everything on that thing, so it's awesome. So I did that, then I went back to singing. Then a year later, they asked me if I could do Roger Rabbit because they needed to do some replacement stuff with Roger Rabbit. So I said, "Jeepers, sure I could." And next thing you know, we were doing that, and that was great. And then I got this. I got an agent, and they said, "Hey, there's this Animaniacs thing," and I said, "Oh, cool." And I didn't know any of these guys, which was good because I wasn't intimidated. If I had known who they were when I met them, I might have been, but I've never really been intimidated anyway, so it would have been a whole new experience. So anyhow, when I went in for my audition, they said it's Wacko and all this stuff, and they let me pick characters, and I said, well, Wacko, because he doesn't wear pants. So I thought that would be a nice idea.
Which, oddly enough, Jess has requested on many occasions.
Yes, exactly. But I'm turning over a new leaf in 2017, man. It's going to be great.
Turn over a fig leaf.
So I was doing some goofy voice as Wacko, some crazy cartoon thing, and I got a call back, which is when they like you enough to see you again. And I walked in, and Andrea, our director, I was there, and she said, now you do impressions, right? I said, yeah, I like doing impressions. She said, why don't you try like Elvis? You know, for real. Now, nobody knows this. Can you imagine that? Be like, hey, man, can I call you Dadu? You know, hey, that's Babu, man. Hello, nurse. A potty emergency. Well, Elvis did have a potty emergency. Yeah. Elvis was in the potty when he never had. Anyhow, so I said, yeah. I said, well, hey, what about, and then she said, well, what about the Beatles? And I said, well, which one? And she goes, well, don't they all sound the same? And I said, that's ridiculous. That would be like everybody from Texas sounding the same, right? So I proceeded to start doing the Beatles. You know, I started by doing John, and I was doing this. Then I started doing Paul, and Paul's a bit more like friendly and warm and cuddly and all that sort of thing, you know. Then I started doing George, and George sounded like he had a cold and spoke slowly. And then there was Ringo, and I started talking like this, you know. So I was doing the Beatles. And she said, that's pretty good, right? Come on, let's give it up. Thanks, Rob. Yeah. See, that's a good party trick too. That's like the Rain Man thing. I got a lot of party tricks out of Animaniacs. Anyhow, she said, oh, I like John. Why don't you mess with John? So I was going, you know, hello nurse, and talking like this and everything. And then they showed me a picture of him, and I saw that he was this little guy. And I said, well, he can't have a voice like a man if he's a small little person. So I just made his voice very little. And next thing you know, that was Wacko. And then I started working with these guys, and the rest is history, man. And here we go.
And isn't it funny how Wacko ends up looking like Jess? Wacko looks like you to me.
Yeah, he kind of does, I know. Even without the pant thing, he looks like me. Yeah.
Right there, yes, she was next, absolutely.
Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, thank you.
Hi,
you actually just answered one of my questions, which why does Wacko have a British accent? But my second question was, how much influence did you guys have over the writing of the characters? Obviously, you created the voices and created the character, but what about the writing of it?
The writing we leave to the writers. I mean, the writer, to me, on this show, the writers were kings. We were wonderful interpreters if we may pat ourselves on the back, but the terrific writing on the show, I never messed with it, I never ad-libbed. The writers, I've become good friends with several of them, Gordon Bressak, Charlie Howell, Peter Hastings. They said, our writing changed as you guys took on the characters. All of a sudden we heard their voices in our ears, and we began to write to you guys and your rhythms and gals and all of that. Yeah. So if there was any influence on the writing, it was just that beautiful synchronicity that can happen between performer and writer as we become familiar with each other and become almost one thing.
Yeah, that's it. But you find that on a lot of the best projects, the writers, even when they are as good as they were in Animaniacs, if you come up with an ad-lib that's really funny, they're really happy to take it because they just want something that makes things better. We were blessed to have such great writers on that show that we did, but if we came up with funny stuff, more often than not, they ended up keeping it, you know? So
yeah, we didn't try to do a whole lot of it, though. You don't want to insult them or anything, but yeah, just subtly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
exactly.
Tress and Maurice have done, I don't even know how many Futuramas and Simpsons, and those consistently, the writing is just ridiculous on the show.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But I have to say, and I think I remember even...
And you don't improvise on those shows, really.
No.
You don't improvise on those shows.
No, you don't. No, and but I remember looking at Tress, because I've had the good fortune of having that woman in my life for, gosh, a long time. I'm so proud of that woman for so many reasons. And the truth is, we have a lot of friends of ours, they're all who do this, but there really is no woman in the history of animation who has achieved the level of proficiency that Tress MacNeille has. Really.
Humility.
It's crazy.
He just made $5.
Yeah, great. $5 US. But also, it is still up here. I mean, she's been up here for a long time and continues to...
So tired.
It's such an it's astonishing. She was a waitress at the Last Supper. She's been around. And she got Jesus' phone number. That's incredible.
I know. He was a real cat.
But I remember looking at you during Animaniacs and thinking, seriously, unless you're on The Simpsons, this is as good as it gets, because everybody on both sides of the glass,
So good.
the stars really aligned. It was, and we knew it. We totally knew it.
Totally.
Yeah.
This lady right here had the next question. Yep.
Do you want to go first? You go.
No, you go.
Hey.
No, you go. No, you go.
Okay, so
Is that Sarah and Rachel?
it is.
Yes.
What's
Hi,
up,
you
fam? Okay, so you guys have been in this business for like a hot second. You guys know what you're doing. You've worked on a lot of shows, and I was just wondering, as someone who grew up watching y'all's stuff, but also watches more modern things, what you think of how animation has changed, because it's a relatively new art form, and you guys make up a huge chunk of that time in history for animation. And so I just wanted to know your thoughts on how animation has changed, writing, the style of it, your part in it, all that stuff.
Well, the cool thing that I can say just right at the top is the best part about this job is to be a chameleon and get to work on a lot of different stuff, you know. And there's always been different, like, you know, facets and forms of animation that comes in. But what's really cool is when you can do something like Animaniacs that's really irreverent, right? And that's that thing, and it's kind of classic Looney Tunes-esque cartoon. Then you do something like Drawn Together on Comedy Central, which was exactly as politically incorrect as it could be. Same actor, you know, same thing, but it's a completely different thing. And then you do something like Doc McStuffins on Disney, which for little kids. So, and you're doing all these things, and this is true for all of us. We all do so many things from so many different kinds. I think that, you know, the coolest thing with animation is just that now there's so much more of it. You know what I mean? Because it used to be restricted to network TV and maybe, you know, some smaller network stations, but now there's thousands of cable stations, there's the internet, there's films, there's more animated movies being made than ever. So it's just a lot more opportunity. And there's, like I said, there's you know, all kinds of types, from the very sweet to the very, very twisted. You know?
Speaking of sweet and twisted, Tress,
Yeah, Tress.
what is your take on how animation has changed in the last number of years?
Well, like Jess said, we have the luxury of working on many, many new shows. I mean, we've continued to work on many other projects, and they are of various styles. I was never myself a huge anime fan. I just, I like a looser, more Disney-fied Warner Brothers sort of a cartoon. But I've had the privilege of working on some naughty cartoons. And then I also do a lot of Disney classic, you know, Daisy and Chip and Queen of Hearts and Merryweather and various and sundry others. And it's a real palate cleanser. I'm always glad. And Rob and I do Veggie Tales.
Oh, we have a blast on Veggie
Sweet, beautiful show. I'm always relieved to have that to kind of like atone for my sins. No, it's making people happy, and that's all good and everything. It's not inciting anyone to violence, as far as I know.
No, not so. There are people who will go after you with
No snuff cartoons or anything. Yeah.
I've noticed that in terms of the writing, some of the newer cartoons, there's less dialogue. You know, it's a lot more action-driven.
Yeah.
We were a very dialogue-driven show.
Yeah.
When I do an Adventure Time, I never know what the F is going on.
I don't know what's going on. I don't
I
know.
think the writers
I just have
either.
these lines, and I do them. And
Totally non-contextual.
completely. And John DiMaggio's been doing the show for 5 years. He still doesn't know what the show is about.
What?
He would be the first one to tell you, I don't know what's going on there. You know? So that I've noticed.
That is so true.
And then there's this sort of love of a new kind of humor that came along, you know, as your young lives came along. Random,
Yeah.
like random, just random stuff, like random. random. And that was not kind of around what we were doing. There was not random. It was not just characters staring at each other and saying something bizarre. It was more joke-driven, a little more constructed. That said, it's kind of turning around again. A show like Rick and Morty
Yeah.
that is so